Hi, my name is Kim.
I'm Jen, and we are going to talk to you today about aggressive behavior in children, how to identify it and prevent it, and everything else in between. We've gotten lots of requests for this topic because their young children are hurting others, including siblings, friends, neighbors, and parents. So we're hoping that we can shed some light on this subject for you and give you some realistic strategies so that we can prevent some of it. But first of all, you need to know that some of what's happening is based on impulsivity and difficulty with communication, which is all part of development.
Yeah, it's very important to know what to realistically expect from a child because all kids are going to hit and bite and grab your face and push into you. That's part of normal development. Those aren't kids that we want to discipline at all, but you need to realistically know that between 0 months and 18 months, they don't feel separate from you. They don't see themselves as a unique individual, so they aren't going to be able to make decisions about what is right or wrong. At 18 months, they are just starting to get a few words, but primarily their behaviors are actions. They can't put into words what they're thinking about. They're really not doing a whole lot of thinking. They might say a few words, but they're really not doing a whole lot of thinking. So they're just going to be acting. So you're not really going to be able to correct them with words at 18 months. At 2, they're still very, very impulsive. That's a big thing that happens at the age of 2. They are not able to control their emotions and their actions. And so we can't expect them to understand us when we say, no, you're going to hurt your brother when you hit him, because at the age of 2, they can't. It's not really until about 2.5 to 3 that they can start to understand brief directions about their behavior and start to have some control over their behavior. So, we've worked with, we're both occupational therapists. We've worked with kids for close to 75 years between the two of us. And we've seen parents, for example, slap a 12-month-old on the hands, telling them not to touch something. And I say, they don't understand what you're saying at the age of 12 months. And they say, yes, they do. Look at their face. Well, what their face is telling me is that they're scared, because they can tell by the tone of your voice and the smack on the hands that something has changed and they're scared. But trust me, they have no idea that they're not supposed to touch the things on the coffee table, because at 12 months, they don't have the cognitive abilities to do that. It's really after 2.5 that they can start to understand your words. So, Jen, what else do we have?
Good point. So let's start with identifying triggers. So in that instance that Kim just gave, we would just simply move the stuff off of the coffee table that they can't touch. It's just not worth a conversation. If it's something important to you, if it's something that's going to hurt them, we're just going to remove it. But what I'm going to recommend that you do is keep a record. So oftentimes parents say to me, oh, he always does this or he never does that. But once they start record keeping, it sheds a different light onto the situation, that they realize then that these things are happening at a certain time of day, or maybe it's before nap or after nap, or maybe they're hungry, or maybe there's lots of different maybes or reasons why. But once you keep the record, you have a much better scientific way of understanding what's really happening with the child.
Right. I think if you keep a record, this is so important, for about 3 days, it will really shed a light on what's happening. Maybe he hits consistently when he wakes up in the morning. Well, if he's like I am, I don't want anybody talking to me for 30 minutes when I wake up in the morning. I want my 2 cups of coffee, and then I'm a nice person. But prior to that, I'm not. And a lot of our kids are that way. So if you're doing some note keeping, you might find that to be true. You also might find that a child is hitting or being more aggressive on nights that they didn't sleep well. Maybe they didn't get a nap that day. Maybe they didn't eat well. Maybe they've got a stuffy nose. Maybe they're gassy. Maybe they have constipation. So that note writing will allow you to figure out what some of the biological triggers are for that as well. You're also going to notice that the incidence of being aggressive really peaks a lot at 2. They start to they're separate from you. They have their own unique personality. They know what they want, but at 2, they can't really put it into words. So we've talked about it earlier, they act upon what they want and need. They're not able to tell you in words. So you're going to see a lot of aggressiveness there. And when words really start to kick in, maybe 2.5, closer to 3, you're going to notice a decrease in that. But prior to those words kicking in, they're really going to act out their emotions. Our sensory seekers, and please refer to some of our sensory videos that we have out there. If you've heard the word sensory processing disorder, sensory processing challenge, some of our kids hit and bite. Bite is a big one. Push into things, push into you, push other kids because they like the sensory input. If you think that is your child, then if they're under the age of 3, you can contact the early intervention program in your state, and they will get you scheduled with early intervention therapists to help you work through that. Anything else on that one, Jen?
No, so I think that's important. Is the first one is just identifying what the triggers are. Keep your records, identify your triggers, and get some solid information about what's happening. It doesn't excuse the behavior, and we'll get to that under prevention. We're just saying, let's try and see if we can figure it out. So maybe we could rearrange their day, or maybe they can start out their day by swinging or something that will calm them.
Yeah.
So that's what we're saying. So
yeah.
For number 2,
I do want to add to that. Some parents say to us, I'll say, why do you think he kicked? Why do you think he hit? Oh, for no reason. There is always a reason. So it's for us to be sort of that super sleuth, that detective, to try and sit back, watch them, figure out any biological reasons, time of day, etc., because there is a reason that they did it.
Absolutely. So number 2 is understanding and empathizing. So try and get into their head, try and get into their shoes. If they are tired, if they are sad. We have some families that tell us that their brothers or sisters or neighbors set them off intentionally. And they don't understand that that's happening. And they also don't understand things like they want a ball, they see a ball, so they go and get it. They don't understand that it's not theirs, that it doesn't belong to them, that they need to take a turn. Turn taking is a huge trigger for a lot of our kids. So instead of waiting, they'll lash out. So we, under prevention, we'll get there, but we have lots of ideas for that as well. Anything else under the understanding and empathizing, Kim?
No, and notice, primarily too, under the age of 3, we are trying to teach them how to handle their impulses because they really can't so much until that age. And even, if they do something, they reach out, they hit another child, you can say to them, I know you're angry, I know you wanted that, but we can't hit. It's really good to label their emotions. So eventually, maybe when they're 3, they're going to be able to say, I feel really sad. I wanted that toy. We want them to learn that kind of skill. So I love to label their emotions very, very briefly.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to caution you as a parent or a caregiver is when the child is angry and lashing out, it's not a reflection on you. Don't take it personally. They're not in any way, shape, or form saying that you're a bad parent. They are just trying to communicate their need in the moment, and they're kids. They just don't have the skills that we have as adults. Right. So don't take it personally. The next area is coping skills. We want to give our kids the coping skills, but when they're in the throes of their little hitting, kicking, spitting, whatever it is, we want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that they are removed from the situation and that the attention is given to the person or the thing, if it's a toy that was thrown, kind of overemphasize it and give empathy to the victim, if you will, so that they are not getting attention for their behavior. And oftentimes parents will immediately go to the child and say, stop biting. And at this point, when they're in the midst of it, just remove them and give attention to the victim. That's my advice. Yeah. Anything else in this area, Kim?
Yeah, and some kids, they can bite and you can tell them no bite and it's over. Or another child, they'll hit and you say no hit and you have to distract them with something and it's over. Other children will continue to hit and kick and be aggressive. There could be other things going on with them that we may not know about till they're older. Some of our kids with ADHD have trouble being impulsive for a longer period of time. If they have sensory seeking, sensory processing disorder, they may like that sensory input. And so you might see some of the hitting and kicking behaviors last for a longer period of time. If that happens, you're going to need to, if you can, remove them from the situation. And maybe back in their room, you have a safe place where they can get into a tent that has a lot of pillows so they can relax. Or you've got a box of bean bags in front of a box and you say, I know you're mad, you can't hit, you can throw these. And then you sit in that room with them and you throw those bean bags into the box. Or maybe they've got a little mini punching bag. I've ordered that for several kids. You can't hit your brother, but you can hit this. And you stay back in there and they hit that punching bag because we want to teach them alternative coping mechanisms.
And I think that's a really good point, what Kim said, is that we tell them what they can do. You can hit this, you can throw this, you can jump off of a step, you can push a laundry basket. Tell them what they can do, because when we say don't do that or stop that, they don't necessarily understand that. So giving them the positive of what they can do will be very helpful.
You can
The other thing,
you can stomp your foot. That's something you can do right then and there. It doesn't hurt anybody. You can take your hands and you can squish them together and you can growl. So we want to teach them different ways of coping because we all have anger and we all have ways of expressing them. And it's great to teach kids at such a young age how to deal with their aggressiveness appropriately.
yeah. And so another idea for you is to stay as calm as possible. Stay calm and stay even keeled and minimize your talking. When kids are upset or angry or in a rage, you're just doing the wah, wah, wah at that point in their head. So keep your words super simple. That hurts. Just remove them and go to the victim. The other thing you can do is what Kim was also mentioning was reading their behavior as a sensory need. So if they are kicking, maybe they are looking for input in their legs for whatever reason, or if they're biting, maybe they want input in their jaw. So we can say, if you want to kick, or here's your bucket of things that you can bite. If you want to bite, pick one of these, so that they can have an alternative. That we're not saying don't bite, we're saying if you want to bite or you need to bite, here's what you can bite. Does that make sense?
It does. And I really like what Jen said, and this is so important, that particularly when they're under 3, under 2.5, all of those words we say to them, they're not comprehending, particularly if they're emotional and they're biting and they're hicking because they're mad. Anything you say is really going to go in one ear and out the other. But if you can get their attention, keep it to just a few words because they really don't have the ability to comprehend more than that.
And when they're super angry and throwing and hitting and kicking, those cortisol levels are skyrocketing. And for us, like we might take a walk, calm down, come back, we're good. For those kids, that cortisol level takes a really long time to come down. And then it might spike again because it's already elevated. So there are biological things going on in the body that we have control over in the prevention piece of this, and we'll get there, but in the throes of it, not so much. So physical activity always helps. And that's the proprioception. Go to the proprioception video and watch that again, and it will give you lots of information. So prevention is kind of, in my opinion, the crux of it all. It's the longest piece of it. It's the part that we want to make sure that they are staying regulated so that we can prevent these episodes of the biting and the kicking and the hitting. So the first one, and we talked about it a little bit, is having realistic expectations, understanding what happens at different ages so that we're not expecting a 2-year-old to go clean their room or follow multi-step directions, or even understand what we're saying when we're having long drawn out conversations with them, because they're just not. So understanding child development is super important. The next one is being consistent. So if, let's just say you have a rule that you can't drink in the living room. If you slip and one day you let the kid drink in the living room, he's not going to understand that you slipped. He's just going to understand like, oh, I guess I can now drink in the living room. How cool is this? Or eat ice cream or whatever, because he doesn't understand that it was just, you were tired that day, you were on the phone, you were distracted, and it was just like a slip of a moment. He's just thinking, or she's thinking, hey, cool, I can now do what I need to do. Right? Do you have anything to say about that, Kim?
And how would you tie that into the hitting and aggressive behaviors?
Well, just that being consistent. So if he can't hit Susie when he's angry, he also can't hit Susie when he's sad, when he's tired. If you can't hit, you can't hit. If you have rules, you have rules. And whatever they are for your family, and they're different for my family and they're different for Kim's family, it just needs to work for you and your family. So it's hard to say to them, nope, you can't hit, and then he sees us hit our younger sibling when they did something wrong. So if you have a rule, stick with it, I guess is what I'm really saying. Does it make sense? Yeah. So the next one, and we chatted about it already, so I'm not going to belabor the point, is the proprioceptive activities. Go back to the first video on proprioception and just think push, pull, carry, heavy work. That is what our muscles are craving for most of our lives, and that is what's going to help keep us calm and even keeled. I'm going to pull up some books here. Kim has some books that she really likes a lot, and we are going to share some of those with you.
Because you can start planting the seed, even though our 2-year-olds don't have a lot of language, you can start planting the seeds with these wonderful books that have pictures. Teeth are not for biting. So if your 2-year-old starts biting a whole lot, you could start reading these at nighttime, start planting the seeds. So maybe in the day, if he starts to bite, you can say, remember, teeth are not for biting. Because, they have still, I want to say they have language delays at 2. They don't really understand a lot of language. You want to be repetitious about it. You want to be brief about it. You want to bring it up a number of times. Using visuals like the book is very helpful.
And this series has a lot of other things. The tails are not for pulling, and germs are not for spreading. And
I think there's are not for kicking. I think there's one of those as well. But yeah. I think those are very helpful, particularly for the young kids.
Yeah, exactly. So another idea is minimize your no. So a lot of times kids hear that, no, don't touch this. No, don't do that. No, don't do this. And I get that it's an automatic reaction, but sometimes what happens is that kids hear it so often they just ignore it. So I think from what I've read and what I've studied and what research shows is that you try and save those no's for super important situations, like don't touch the stove and don't run across the road, like kind of life-threatening sort of situations. And instead of saying no, don't touch that, you just say, here, let me show you something. Kids are highly distractible at this age for a reason. So we want to use that to our advantage. So minimize your no's and keep things positive.
And I also want to say that young kids are emotional sponges. And they can also feel anxiety at a very, very early age. So if you notice a lot of aggressiveness and a lot of pushing, particularly if it's coming out of nowhere, if you haven't seen it, look for changes in the house. What changed? Did somebody's work pattern change? Did somebody come visit? Because all of that is different. All of that is a stress. If there's a lot of stress in the house, for some reason there's, somebody in the house is getting very emotional about things. Those kids are going to pick up on it. They can't put it into words. They're going to act out on it, and they're going to do all they can. They're going to do what they're capable of doing to release their stress, and it's usually pushing, hitting, kicking, that sort of thing. So analyze what is going on in the environment.
I'm going to share my screen again for my next idea, which is the universal no sign. So this is keeping our words to a minimum, and just, you don't even have to, you can print one of these, but I sometimes, while I'm in a child's home, I will get a piece of paper, get a red marker, put a line through it, and slap it on the TV, or put it on the light switch so that they stop flicking the lights. And the parents don't even have to use words. It's just a given. Nope, you may not touch this anymore. So that's another idea, and that has worked quickly, like in immediate situations. The other idea is natural consequences. A lot of times parents feel the need to rescue kids so that they don't get upset, because we know that when they get upset, they often go into their rage and they start throwing their toys or kicking or whatever. But in reality, when the tower falls over, that's a teaching opportunity for, oh no, the tower fell over. What can we do? So don't feel the need to go in and rescue them so quickly.
But model alternatives for handling the stressful situations that aren't hitting or biting. And that, I would say, is very effective after the age of 2.5.
Absolutely. So some other ideas that we have are, if you can keep a picture schedule for predictability, they'll know when things are coming so that they won't keep asking you over and over again, are we going to the pool? Can we, whatever the situation is. If you have a picture schedule, that might help them have a little more predictability in their lives.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, and I would say that, again, aggressiveness is to be expected between 2 and 3. But if it is particularly aggressive and other people are getting hurt, or if animals are involved in that aggressiveness. If it persists after the age of 3, there might be some other things going on. Under the age of 3, you can call the early intervention program that you have in your state. And if they're eligible, they will send therapists to provide you with some assistance, or certainly talk to the pediatrician about it.
And after age 3, you can still talk to the school about it, because there are therapists in the school that can help you as well. So I still have more prevention ideas, so hang in there with us, because we're doing it. So another idea is being pretty specific about your praise, that you want to catch them being good so that you can praise them, because we don't want to constantly give attention to that negative behavior. So we want to do oh, I like how you're sitting and playing with your toy, and being very specific about that praise. The other idea I have is reducing TVs and videos that have violence in them. So a lot of shows that we think are okay are really not. And there's a list that you can find on the internet about different shows that are violent. So some of them that come to mind are the PJ Masks, Scooby-Doo, Mickey Mouse. Things that we think are pretty child-friendly are not so child-friendly, because our kids try and emulate those behaviors, and it gets a little bit dicey, and it's hard to explain that to them. So some other ideas that you may have heard out there are some self-regulation programs. I'm going to try and pull some up as well. This one is called superflex. And it is on this side it's based on cartoons. This is for the older child, the 4 and plus, and they talk about the different behaviors that are difficult for them. So I don't know if you can really pull that up. There we go. So the rock brain, who has difficulty, he's pretty rigid, a rigid thinker, or the glass man, who make people have huge upset reactions, or the distractor. And then on the other side of this are what can we do to help those? So, there we go. So this is the flip side of it, that we need to be more flexible. The rock brain needs to be more flexible. The glass man we help to defeat him. So the cool as a cucumber helps to defeat the glass man. So there are different zone of regulation activities out there to help our kids. Another one is called zones of regulation. So that's what this looks like, and it talks about kind of escalating behavior, red being the red zone, the difficult zone, blue is that we're kind of cool as a cucumber sort of thing. And then the other one is the alert program, and I actually don't have that up here, but that just talks about behaviors related to situations. So if we go to a basketball game, we don't want to be sleepy. We want our behavior to be regulated for the event. And then the last one here is Daniel the Tiger. And this is a spin-off of Mr. Rogers, and he kind of is a helper, and he's positive in how he helps his friends and that kind of thing. So those are some areas that you might want to explore with your therapist, what would be best for your child, because they all have different properties that are good and bad, and it kind of depends on your child, and maybe you can pick and choose what works for you out of each one of them. Anything else, Kim?
Yeah, and we repeated this earlier, but I think it's so important that in young children, sleep almost trumps everything. If sleep is not right, emotional responses are going to be horrible. And we know that's true for us. And imagine if you're a 2.5-year-old and you didn't sleep well and you don't have language to say, hey, I'm crabby, leave me alone. They're going to act out a lot. So know how many hours of sleep that your children should get based on age. And if they're not getting that, I would start there, because that might be the reason for their aggressiveness.
Yeah, we have a video on that as well, so that might be helpful. And I just have 2 more things. One is be kind to yourself and take care of yourself. So go for a walk, eat healthy, get enough sleep, do what you need to do so that you can be prepared for the days, because these day in and day out with aggressive kids is difficult. So That's my one for you. And then my last piece of advice is, and this was given to me a long time ago, and I used it when my kids were little, and I liked it a lot, is I would go to bed, I would physically write down 3 positive things that happened during the day. Because when you go to bed with positive in your head, as opposed to just all of this trauma from the day, it just changes it and gives it a little different spin for you. And it really helped me when my kids were very young. Anything else, Kim?
No, we hope you found this helpful, and please check out our other sensory videos or other sleep videos, a number of other videos at Occupational Therapy with Kim and Jen, and please like and subscribe, and see you again soon.
Have a good day.